Hey there, good people, and welcome back to the DNP Podcast. I'm your host, Debo Agbade, and week 1 is in the books, with week 2 just around the corner. We're right back into the swing of things in the NFL season. This episode will discuss where Bears quarterback Caleb Williams ranks within his draft class, are the Miami Dolphins on the brink of collapse, and as I'll do every week, picks for 6 games in the weekend against the spread in our Pick 6 section. This podcast is available on Spotify and other podcasts, so follow on those platforms and give it an honest rating. Like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube so you can stay up to date with each upload. So, we'll start off with Monday night, because I stayed up, watched the Vikings-Bears game, and just something came to my mind just as, the game went on. Obviously, you start off and the Bears have the ball and they're looking really good. Like those scripted plays, Caleb starts 10 for 10 and you're thinking, well, hold on a minute. Like the Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams partnership is going to develop into something that's going to sustain itself as a good partnership for maybe even this season. Like this is a Vikings defense with Brian Flores that is, known to frighten many a young quarterback or many a quarterback in general, whether veteran or rookie. So the fact that Caleb was able to, evade pressure as well as he did, making that throw on the sidelines for Amadinza, you're standing there or you're sitting there thinking, like, okay, now the Bears machine is going to start to roll, and the Bears are going to be a team that has a 4,000-yard pass for the first time in their history, or just a team that's able to compete because of their quarterback and not just, in spite of it like they may have done in previous years. And then you're looking on the other side, which is obviously the opponent JJ McCarthy picked in the same 2024 draft class in the first round as he was, and you're going, okay, this is going to take some time for him to learn, because this is his NFL debut, his first real game action, his kind of pseudo rookie year, if you would say, and you're like, okay, this is the difference between why Caleb went first and why JJ went all the way to 10, because, this is the talent you're seeing with Caleb, and okay, maybe it's going to take something here for JJ to actually perform at the highest level and, be worth that 10th overall pick. But then the script just flips. And all of a sudden, you're asking questions about whether Caleb's going to be able to take this team to where they need to go. And you're like JJ, and it's like, okay, there's the winning mentality you saw at Michigan. There's the, one loss in his whole college career. And you're starting to think, oh, no. Like, in my head, I'm even thinking, is Caleb the worst quarterback in his draft class? Is he, or at least in the first round, because I'm not going to involve Spencer Rattler in this conversation, as he was the only other quarterback taken in that draft class outside of the first round. But I had that question in my head watching the game, like, oh, you're seeing what the others are able to do, and I'll get into them one by one in a minute. But, okay, you're seeing what JJ's able to do right out of the gate in his NFL career. Like, okay, he's faced a difficult situation, which Caleb has faced many times in his career so far, and it's only lasted 18 games, and it's like, oof, this is one guy who's had that, down 11 in the fourth quarter, throwing that pick 6, and it's like, how does he come back from this? And he does. And Caleb Williams has been in many tough situations last season. You're looking at, I guess he didn't have a chance to reply in the Hail Mary game, but there are many times last season where you're looking at the Chicago Bears and you're like, okay, can Caleb turn things around for us? And whether that's on him or not, you're looking at the coaching situation he had to deal with, and he's already had 3 head coaches in his career now, because obviously Eberflus, the time manager, wasn't working. But even now, you're saying, okay, there was the end of that game where Ben Johnson, you need to tell your man, or whether your man can't kick it out of the end zone, because obviously Cairo Santos was definitely told to kick it out of the end zone. He just didn't have the ability to, and it's kind of known that he's not got the strongest leg. Like, not being able to kick out the end zone from 35-yard line is a bit of is something you should know about your roster, know about your players beforehand. So that's one thing where it's like, oh, maybe kick it out of bounds if you can't get it to the end zone. Just those little things that are the difference, because you're seeing KOC on the other side saying, okay, no, bring it out the end zone. Come on, let's move. Let's, get this 2-minute warning done and take away that stoppage from them. So you're looking at it and saying, okay, the situation Caleb's in, the ability to handle the tough situations in comparison to the others in his draft class, you're asking the question, okay, is he out of the quarterbacks in his first round, when it's all said and done, going to rank 6th out of the 6 quarterbacks taken? So let me just go through it one by one. Obviously, second overall pick, Jaden Daniels. Already know what my thoughts are on Jaden Daniels from the episode 1 of this podcast, but obviously he's a tier one guy in my opinion, out of the upper tier echelon of quarterbacks. Just his ability to handle pressure in terms of blitzing, handle not turning the ball over as much as other quarterbacks who are in a similar situation were, taking a franchise, which is Caleb was in a similar situation where you're trying to pull a franchise up from the ruin. The Commanders were 4-13 the year before Jaden comes in, and then boom, NFC Championship game in his rookie year, showing the veteran-like play that he is very much touted for, and there's no real reason to believe that's going to slow down in Jaden Daniels. I think he's kind of cemented himself as we sit here as the number 1 quarterback in his draft class so far. Now, pick 3 was Drake May, and I think this is probably one where it's like, okay, the worst quarterback for Caleb maybe is a bit of a stretch, because Drake May is in a similar situation where he's got all the physical tools that you'd want in a quarterback, and he's got all of physical attributes that all of the aficionados would say that he looks like a guy that's gonna do something in this league and whatever. And the thing that maybe would put Drake May as like more likely to have a successful career over Caleb Williams is the fact that this Patriots organization is one of excellence, and historically has been, at least in more recent history, has shown an ability to put all the investment in. We saw in free agency that they were able to put the money down and on the right players as well, especially bringing in a Coach Vrabel that has been able to make more out of less. And obviously week 1, the Raiders were able to, put Drake May in unfavorable situations and end up getting the win on the road. And you're like, okay, let's take a step back for Drake May here. But I think in terms of what's around him, I would say I have more faith in the experience of a Coach Vrabel and the Patriots organization to make something more out of Drake May than the Bears out of Caleb as we sit here today. Now, pick 8 is Michael Penix Jr. for the Atlanta Falcons, and don't take this as a pinch of salt just because I'm a Falcons fan, but let me just get into why I have faith that Michael Penix for the future is going to have a better career as we sit here than Caleb Williams. One thing is, in terms of being dropped into an unfavorable situation, I think Michael Penix has definitely had a tougher start to his NFL career than Caleb Williams in terms of coming in as the backup to a much favoured, or well, at least highly paid Kirk Cousins in his career. To start is mostly unfavourable. We remember the conversation when Caleb was coming into the league was, oh, is this the best situation a number 1 overall pick's ever walked into? I mean, you're coming in, you've given him DJ Moore, you've got DeAndre Swift, you've obviously spent the money on the defense, and it's like there's no such conversation that you can realistically have in terms of what the Falcons were able to put around Michael Penix, at least as a whole organization, because it's like you've just spunked $40 million a year on a quarterback to go ahead of him, so there's not that much touting in terms of what's around Michael Penix in regards to Caleb Williams, and despite that, he's only shown that the ability to handle the pressure and handle just the general play and not being such an emotional roller coaster in terms of, okay, I'm still going to start the game really hot and then I'm going to go cold. Like, from the 4 games he started, Michael Penix has been a consistent presence that has allowed throughout games to allow the Falcons to compete in every game he's been in. Like, despite his 1-3 record, in every one of the losses, each of those 3 losses, Michael Penix has either made a game-tying or go-ahead touchdown. Go-ahead meaning put them in the lead at the time, if you don't know. But in the fourth quarter of all of those 3 losses, he has put the Falcons in positions to come away with wins, and has either not had the ability to finish, given the Commanders' loss and the Panthers' loss were 2 games where he's forced overtime and hasn't then gotten the ball back. And then in this Buccaneers one in week 1, he's even driven down the field, 59 seconds left, 2 timeouts, without his wide receiver 1 in Drake London, without his wide receiver 2 in Darnell Mooney the entire game. He still put them in position for a 44-yard field goal, which unfortunately Younghoe Koo misses. So I would just say that when it comes to conversation around Michael Penix, I think he's shown that he hasn't shrunk in those big moments, which I think in situation with Caleb Williams, we're yet to see that ability to kind of rise up and drag the team forward. So I would say in terms of Michael Penix, that's a quarterback where I say that's someone who can look forward, moving forward, have a better career than Caleb Williams. Pick 10, JJ McCarthy. Obviously, we saw what happened on Monday night to turn the tide on his own poor performance, which is another thing. I think if you're playing well and the team around you shrinks, that's where it's like, okay, you can, I guess, maybe give a bit more of a pass, or you could understand the certain situations that they found themselves in. But in terms of JJ McCarthy, he's the one who performed poorly. He's the one who you would argue has put their team in a precarious position in terms of throwing a pick 6, in terms of generally not getting a first down for the first couple of drives. And you're like, oh, come on, JJ, let's do something here. But he's the driving force of bringing the Vikings back into the game and eventually winning it. Like we heard Aaron Jones after the game on the Speakeasy podcast, that he's the one who's in the huddle saying, where would you guys rather be? And that's when it's 17-6 and they're just about to start their comeback, and you're like, okay, this isn't someone who's just shrinking or kind of retreating when it's time to lead the troops back into battle. He's the one who's the general, the commander, who's like, come on lads, let's get our stuff together and let's get this win in the game. So when you look at that, when you look at obviously the winning mentality that is clearly shown and that he showed himself in that Monday night comeback, and then you pair that with the ability to learn under one of the premier coaches in the NFL in Kevin O'Connell, you're like, okay, JJ's certainly going to have the right pieces around him to be able to push the Vikings forward and compete at the highest level to win the division this year, as I said in my prediction. So I think JJ is definitely one who looks like his career is going to only go from strength to strength, alongside Jaden, alongside Penix, and alongside this next quarterback, who Bo Nix, who was picked 12 in that draft class. And he's someone else who in their rookie year showed it already, like they can take a franchise, or obviously the franchise wasn't exactly in the, I say they're not exactly in the doldrums. It was their first playoff appearance since Super Bowl in 2016, so it was 2015 actually. So in actuality, this is not to say that they're in the doldrums in terms of what the Bears have been through, but certainly a franchise who hadn't made the playoffs in 7 years, and he's a big part of their ability to make that run into the playoffs. You can actually say Bo Nix has shown that his chance and shown his ability to make a team that was much less favoured and make them a team that, you know, some people are saying is going to be a Super Bowl contender. And I personally don't believe that. But the fact that you can have a team in the conversation after your rookie year, and barring the sophomore slump, which granted he didn't exactly look the best against Tennessee in week 1, and in my opinion still probably has the lowest ceiling out of the 6 first-round quarterbacks from the 2024 class. He's definitely the closest to his peak, and is definitely probably got the highest floor, if at all, in terms of what the other players have shown, that he can be someone who maintains that level of play and maintains at least this floor, ceiling, wherever you want to rank him. And when you've paired him, and again, as I said with JJ McCarthy, like when you're paired with one of the elite coaches in the league, especially on the offensive side of the ball, like Sean Payton has shown to be throughout his career, you can easily say that, okay, Bo Nix, it's very likely he maintains this level of play throughout his career. And whether the team around him is great, obviously the Broncos defense is one of the top ones in the league, Bo Nix is going to be in playoff conversations throughout his career, and we're not sure we can say that for Caleb Williams just yet. And I think when you look throughout the rest of the draft class, you're saying, okay, Jaden Daniels done it in year 1, despite being in the NFC. He's got to face the Eagles every year, but 12-5, got the win last week against the Giants comfortably. Like, that can kick on. We'll see what happens Thursday night. Drake May, I guess that is the one right now, as we sit here, that I can say is a bit of a question mark in terms of can they be a consistent playoff, competition and conversation, because obviously you've got the Bills, the Jets surprised a lot of people. Whether Justin Fields is able to maintain that level of play throughout the season, we shall see, but it definitely looked really good. Michael Penix, he's one where his division, at least for the time being, is only one true competition in terms of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield. Bryce reverted back to, bench Bryce, and whether doubt he gets benched, but it's definitely a conversation in terms of like, okay, we've seen you retreat now in terms of, or regress, probably for lack of a better term, again. So are you going to, was that a mirage at the end of last season, or are we back to, Alabama Bryce? Not so sure, but at least Michael Penix, the Saints aren't a conversation at the minute, so he's going to be someone who, regardless of what your thoughts are about the Falcons, is going to be in playoff conversations. JJ, we saw that Monday night. We saw the Vikings. We know what the Vikings have been for the past couple of years, and they can easily maintain that level of form. And again, with Bo Nix. So I think it's a real conversation to have. And as I sit here, would I say Caleb's going to be the 6th out of 6th when it's all said and done out of the 2024 first-round quarterbacks? If I had to put money on it, I would. If I had to put money on it, I'd probably not my house, not the life savings, but a cheeky tenner. I don't think the odds would be too bad for that. I'd say it's not completely out of the realm of possibility, and I'd say it could be the most likely scenario when it's all said and done, that Caleb Williams is at least the most disappointing out of the 6 quarterbacks in his draft class. Right, now, let's move on to a team that's just, they looked bad in week 1, man. They looked just as I say, disheveled, or just generally disorganized. I don't know if you could go into the thesaurus, you could find any word that is similar to bad. Search on Google, say bad synonyms, and that would explain and give you an idea of the level that the Miami Dolphins showed on Sunday when they faced the Indianapolis Colts on the road, because that was just from all levels. Obviously, we know the secondary is a bit of a question mark ever since they traded away Jalen Ramsey and they're left with Kader Kohu out for the season. You're just like, oh, this is going to be a long year for Miami, and that Colts game was just another indication of that. 33-8 was the score, and you see the pictures of obviously Tua throwing the picks. You see Tyreek Hill on the sidelines, very disappointed and very negative, and saying a lot of bad. I don't know, you obviously don't hear what he says, but you could tell by the body language that he wasn't best pleased. And when you look at the fact that I don't believe he's had a 30-yard reception for about 2 years now, or late in the 2022 season, and you're like, hold on, his Tyreek Hill is supposed to be his bread and butter, and he's been on the Dolphins for the longest time now, and we've seen what the ceiling is for the Miami Dolphins in the Tua and Mike McDaniel partnership now, that they're not able to beat the big teams or the teams that are winning teams. Like, that was the record even when they were making the playoffs and they were looking good to win the AFC East. Still, like, there was only one win against a winning team, and that was the Dallas Cowboys. And whatever your opinions on the Dallas Cowboys are, like, if you think that, okay, that's not even like a real big team anymore because they don't make NFC championships or whatever, so that's even more damaging to the Miami Dolphins under this tenureship, that they just can't beat anyone serious. Like, they were going to the Kansas City to Arrowhead in that freezing game, and no one really had a mind to think that despite having Tua and Tyreek at full strength, that they can go into Kansas City and get anything done. So there's the mentality question mark that everyone really has against the Miami Dolphins. And even looking at this offseason, had reports of the Detroit Lions having joint practice with the Miami Dolphins, and they're saying they don't practice like we do. What do they even do around here? And that's obviously a Detroit Lions team that in the past couple of years, despite what happened in week one, that they're a team that they're built tough. They run the ball hard with the Gibbs and Montgomery and have the O-line and everything. So you're looking around the league, and a team with the reputation of being tough is like, these guys, they don't do it like us. They're not like us. Shout out Kendrick. In terms of they just they're not built the same, basically. And to say that in public, you can only imagine what was happening in that joint practice, and then that bleeds over into week one, and you're just like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe they just aren't built tough. And obviously these are professional NFL players, so you can't imagine that the talent is not there, or you can't imagine they don't want to be there and they weren't trying their hardest. But there's just something off with the Miami Dolphins, and something off maybe even with the leadership at the top, with Chris Greer and the roster he's built. The roster he's built is like, why was Jalen Ramsey basically like, I'm not coming back, so just let's go? And then it was even mutual of like, yeah, you're not good to be around, so let's obviously move on and let's bygones be bygones or whatever. And then Johnny Smith going as well, who's himself actually wanted to stay in Miami, funny enough, but the money reportedly wasn't there for him. So you're just looking at the Dolphins, things need to change. And it's years now of disappointing ends to season, and this current era, there's not reason to believe, especially given what happened on Sunday, that things are going to change for the better with this current tenureship in mind. And I have friends who are Miami Dolphins fans, and they're even saying questions have to be asked about McDaniel even before last season, which obviously last season wasn't very positive. They did still have a chance to qualify for the playoffs in Week 18, but there still wasn't a belief in Tua and a belief in Mike McDaniel that, okay, even if we get to the playoffs, we're going to do something, we're going to make some noise, and they're just looking at what's happening now as like, yeah, let's pack it in, let's bring in a new head coach, bring in a new quarterback, and especially considering what the quarterback class is probably going to be in this off season, and you're looking at the head coaches out there, and maybe I don't even want to bring up names, or like a Joe Brady, I guess, I brought up a name, but yeah, from who's the Bills OC right now, or Todd Monken, or just any new voice, which I think maybe is the big thing that the Dolphins look like they need at the moment, is just someone new to come in and maybe be a bit more hard-nosed, because that's obviously the question that's always been with Mike McDaniel. He's a bit too buddy, especially for a team in a city like Miami, where you've seen people say that the hardest job in the NFL is to be the GM of the Miami Dolphins, because not only do you have to measure whether they're a good player on the field, or what family you have around them, is just their mentals, that are like, how do they act in certain situations? And we all know situations I'm referring to in a city like Miami, which there's a lot to do over there, there's a lot happening. There's no shortage of there's no shortage of activities to get involved in. Like, you look at Green Bay, there's not much going on there. There are many cities around the NFL where the question of distractions aren't as grand as they are in Miami. So having a coach like Mike McDaniel, who may be a bit, I guess, fair to say, too, lenient, you could say, or not as hard-nosed. When you've got certain characters in the building, you just maybe need that new voice who could be a little bit tougher and could be a little bit more, defensively oriented as well, because I don't think you could say the defense is, even with Vic Fangio, who we've now seen go to Philadelphia, and have a defense that is strong and made the difference in a Super Bowl run, which, if you're asking the question of why didn't it work in Miami but it can work in Philly, well, there's a fair chance that it's because the culture around, maybe not just the city, but the culture in the building is more conducive to having that hard-nosed guy in Vic Fangio, where the whole objective of the NFL, or the whole objective of sports in general, is to win. So if you're looking at a guy who has a chance and has an ability to make a defense that leads you on to winning, why is it that guy can work in this building but he can go to another building and thrive? So there's definitely questions that the Miami ownership and just the people in charge in general have to say, like, okay, maybe it's time for a change in the head coaching room. And then Tua as well, like, obviously it's still too early in the season for the Tua injury talk, but given how his injury record has been the past couple of years, it's only a matter of time until he has to miss games, whether it be, obviously there's the concussions that have been a major talking point whenever Tua is injured, and I guess unfortunately for him, there's no reason to believe that that's going to change unless it does. Like, I watched the Cowboys documentary, and you're seeing that in the past, like the last few years of Troy Aikman, they were just concussion after concussion after concussion, and it's happening to Tua early in his career, as opposed to Troy Aikman, who had the Super Bowls in the bank, and then late in the career has to retire earlier than he'd probably like to. So if you're getting these, he's drafted in 2020 and he's already had high profile concussions, you're like, okay, maybe it's not that it's not safe, but that we can't rely on him to play a full 17. And if even when he is playing in the 17, he's having a clear ceiling and having a clear, okay, I guess, question mark when it's when he's facing blitzes like those, interceptions that he threw on Sunday were just a bit like, oh no, this isn't. He's not seeing it or whatever. He's getting bamboozled by what Lou Anarumo did for the Colts defense, and it's like, okay, right, it's just these two here need to be moved on in terms of who we have a quarterback and who we have a head coach, because the trajectory right now is just going phew. Like if it was a stock price, it's going phew. So I would sell any Dolphin stock if I had any in terms of them being able to win. And for a franchise that's the last playoff win, I just searched up is like 2000. I was born in 2002. So the last time the Dolphins won a playoff game, the GameCube was announced. And Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston were married. I didn't even know they got engaged. Like, that's how long it's been in terms of like the information just dwindling, and as the years go by, it's like, okay, there's things that get lost to the ancient text. There's the ancient text basically in terms of having a playoff win for the Miami Dolphins. So there's definitely a thirst for it from a organization, from a fan base as well, that there's just less patience with regards to these things. And I think looking at the Tua Tagovailoa and Mike McDaniel partnership with things like, seems like it's expired, and there is a need for a franchise in the Miami Dolphins to move on from something that just clearly isn't working at the moment. Okay, time for the pick six. Every week I'll give picks for 6 games against the spread. Last week I didn't perform too well. I only won. I did a pick 6 section. I only picked 5 games, so that's great. That's a good start to. As a good omen for the rest of the year. But no, in all seriousness, went 2-3. Giants Commanders +6 for the Giants. Didn't go to plan. Russ fumbles near the goal line in terms of stuff, and just it doesn't run the offense as well as I thought. Bucks Falcons, kind of a bit of a homer pick. Falcons +2.5. Only lost by missing a field goal at the end, so it wasn't as far fetched as some could believe. But the spread didn't come in, so that's fair enough. Titans Broncos -8. That hit on the dot, so that's great. That's a good start. That's a good start in that regard. 20-12 for the Broncos, so that's good. I feel good about that one. Dolphins Colts -1. Boy, did they cover that one. Jesus, just went into the Dolphins and my thoughts on them in the last section. So I guess, I feel quite vindicated with Colts -1. And Texans +3 against the Rams. That was obviously a 5-point game, I believe. There's a low scoring. I thought it'd be low scoring, but yeah, in terms of the spread, the Texans weren't able to cover, and that's fine. 2-3 as you kick on. Got a lot of season left, so I'm not feeling too bad in terms of what my record will be at the end of the year. And you know what? I think it's going to be a 6-0 week. Okay, so you just listen to what I've got to say. Might be some good bankers here. First up, you've got Jags at Bengals. I've got Jags +3.5. I think they looked really good last week. I think obviously I have the Jaguars winning the division, so that was a good feeling for me in terms of what they're able to do. I think obviously Travis Etienne seemed like he was back to his old form. The Bengals defense. I think they're being able to have the luck of the Browns kicker handing 4 points, leaving them on the floor, and in an otherwise what would have been a loss to Cleveland is instead a 1-point win. I think the Jaguars can walk in, and Trevor Lawrence, with Brian Thomas Jr. being used a bit more, Travis Hunter rising up in terms of the volume of touches he gets, and again Travis Etienne looking back to his best. You have a bit of Bashal Tootin in that backfield, make himself a bit more useful. Obviously, all the fantasy owners will be hoping for that in terms of him being able to make an impact. Obviously, the Bengals offense is definitely one to be reckoned with, and I don't take that likely, but I think the Jaguars could keep this within a field goal throughout the game. I think their offense can, in terms of matchups, the Jaguars offense can put up as many points on the Bengals defense as vice versa. So I like my odds with Jaguars plus 3.5 coming in. Panthers plus 6.5 at Cardinals. Cardinals aren't a touchdown team. The Cardinals aren't a touchdown better than the Carolina Panthers. No, obviously Bryce Young had his struggles in the Jaguars game. He's someone who has to step up, and I think that's fair and obviously an opinion you can hold, and it's an opinion I hold as well. But the Cardinals defense isn't a stalwart, isn't something that I believe can keep the Panthers a touchdown away from the Cardinals. So I can definitely look at this spread, look at this line, and say, yeah, the Bryce can dice up the Cardinals defense like he did last year, by the way, taking the Cardinals out of playoff contention, that the Panthers could walk into Arizona and keep it within a touchdown, maybe not come away with the win, but in terms of this spread, plus 6.5, I'll take that all day of the week, every day of the week. Great. Third game, Bills Jets plus 6.5. This one's in MetLife, so that's for one. The Jets were able to put up points last week against the Steelers team that would have thought, and still true, that their defense is the strength of the team. And Justin Fields looked like, okay, this is what, if you had an idea of what Justin Fields was going to be at this point in his career in terms of what his peak is, I think he played really close, if not at that peak, last week against the Steelers. And you have a running game with Breece Hall and Braylon Allen and even Isaiah Davis chipping in. And the Bills, who let Derrick Henry run wild on them, and you can say the Jets can keep this in a touchdown. Again, it's similar to the second one, even though the Bills could easily, I think, the Bills are probably like on a neutral field, they're a touchdown better than the Jets. But to say that the Jets at home, where the Bills don't exactly have the best record going into MetLife, in all honesty, that the Jets can keep this within a touchdown, again, say, take that all every day of the week. Fourth one, Rams minus 5.5 at the Titans. Wow, that Titans O-line did not give Cam Ward much of a chance. And the Rams D-line is one that can, get to the quarterback. Obviously, you got Jared Verse, you got Fisk, you got Byron Young, you got, there's players there that can hurt the Titans defense. And the Titans defense were able to keep Bo Nix pretty quiet, but this is Matthew Stafford now we're talking about here, and he's gonna have Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua. Like, the Broncos don't have that level of receiver, so they're gonna face I think a really want to do better Rams offense that will want to kind of show that they're better than they are, despite getting the win. I think, only being able to get 14, they'll say, okay, we can look at this Titans game and we can put a marker down and say, yes, we're the better team here. So minus 5.5, I'd take that. I think that's going to be, I think that's going to cash in. Fifth one, the Niners minus 4.5 at the Saints. Yeah, I think this one kind of banks on the availability of Brock Purdy. Obviously, Mac Jones stepping in would make this line seem a little bit more techie, but even despite that, I don't think the Saints offense is going to be able to get much against Robert Saleh's, with Fred Warner still about, Nick Bosa. So it's going to be tough for the Saints in this one. Even despite being at home, it just seems like, okay, I don't really believe, even if it's Mac Jones in a quarterback, that the Saints offense can get much going. And I think what we've seen of Kyle Shanahan, what he's been able to do for quarterbacks in his system, like we've seen Jimmy Garoppolo succeed, we've seen Brock Purdy, who is much better than his Mr. Irrelevant term or Mr. Irrelevant place in the draft class that he came in, that he's still Mr. Irrelevant, and he was able to make him a $50 million quarterback. $50 million quarterback. So Mac Jones can still step into that with a full off season. Sam Darnold was able to go from there to 14 wins. The Vikings, like it's QB rehab if we're being honest with ourselves. So if Mac Jones can step in and get stuff done for the 49ers, so I think -4.5 for a Niners team at the Saints, a New Orleans Saints who look like it could easily be the worst team in the league. I think that's a very fair pick to make. And the last but not least, Broncos -1.5 at the Colts. Rode with them last week. I think it's an easy come down spot for the Colts here. Obviously, Daniel Jones, dude. Daniel Jones was perfect. I think you could easily say, in terms of being able to get points from all 7 possessions in the game on Sunday. So I think that's not a level that can be maintained against the Broncos defense, which has the most sacks from last season and was able to get to Cam Ward very efficiently last week. This is one where -1.5. I think that's just that 1 point wins aren't that common in the league. So if field goal win, touchdown win, 10 points, whatever, the Broncos are going to walk into the Colts Dome. And despite what Daniel Jones was able to show last week, I think this is peak come down spot. This is peak. Okay, that was week 1. That's great. We had our fun for a week, but now the Broncos are stepping in and they're going to make things very difficult for us. So that's my pick 6 for the weekend. We'll see if you have any difference of opinion. Let me know in the comments. They'll see Spotify, YouTube. There are comment sections there. So if there's any other pick you would make during the weekend, or if you'd go the other way on some of these picks, let me know. Thanks for listening. Thanks for getting to the end of the podcast. I appreciate those who stay to the end and listen. Same thing with Caleb. Do you think Caleb's going to be the worst quarterback in his draft class when it's all said and done? Am I being too harsh on the Miami Dolphins? Are they just going through a rough patch and they're going to click right back into gear? Let me know in the comments. And again, thanks for listening. I'll be back next week. Like and subscribe on the YouTube. Give an honest rating on the podcast platforms. And I'll see you people next week. Have a good one. Bye-bye.